Bellwright is clearly unfinished, and yet offers a ton of content and a good amount of immersion with its settlement management system. Now, when I'm saying tons of content, I'm talking at least 60 to 70 hours in its current early access state, with features that you don't often see in this exact combination. It definitely is a lot of fun, if you don't mind the slower progress here. That can feel grindy. Before you consider getting this game, however, the very first step is for you to understand the game's developer and publisher history, because Donkey Crew and the publisher Snail Games do have a rather concerning history when it comes to their previous early access titles. And since buying an early access title is an investment, I want to make sure you know what you're getting into. Don't worry, it's not just bad news here. So their previous games like Of Kings and Men and Last Oasis were both released in early access, but then ultimately abandoned. So many players felt ripped off. Because of that, there are, I would say, valid concerns about whether the developers will actually follow through with meaningful updates and improvements this time. Now, what I do have to say is that the developers have acknowledged that they need to gain back the trust of the player base. And based on the frequent patches, as well as their community engagement, just in a couple weeks after Bellwright's release, it at least looks like they are actively working on improving the game. So what you should absolutely be aware of is that if you're buying this game now, you should, more or less, be okay with the content and state it's currently in. Now, the premise of this game is very simple, and yet a lot of fun. You need to establish and grow your own medieval village from the ground up in a pretty large open world setting. This of course involves the typical survival game loop of gathering resources, constructing buildings, but also managing your villagers' needs, and slowly, emphasize on slowly, expanding your settlement over time, which is a really cool aspect of the game, especially since it's third person and not isometric view, like going medieval, for example, instantly making it more immersive for me at least. Bellwright adds a narrative as well, with the ultimate goal being to overthrow the tyrannical queen and liberate the entire land from her oppressive rule. To get this done, you will need to build up the defenses of your village and recruit a sizable army that you can use to coordinate attacks on neighboring settlements, controlled by either bandits or the Queen's forces. Now, I did say there's a narrative here, but it is by no stretch of the imagination one of the game's strong points. The quests are simple kill and fetch quests, and to be frank, they are pretty shallow excuses to provide you with one of the 3 currencies you'll need. Expect to run back and forth, following the next entry in your quest log a lot. The voice acting is very poor as well, with pretty much all of it being AI generated. I would prefer no voice acting at that point.
Thank you. The whole experience in that prison was just horrifying. I've healed physically, but the nightmares haven't left yet.
What is rather well done, on the other hand, is the NPC management, which I believe is one of the harder parts to properly implement, even for big studios. And it is solid, especially for an early access title. Bellwright is more involved in its combat system than your standard survival game. It has a directional blocking and attacking mechanic that adds a bit more skill and strategy to the fighting, but it can be incredibly stiff and clunky at times, especially with the currently lacking animations. I do like this approach though, and with some more updates, it could actually be a refreshing combat system. You can recruit tons of companion characters to join your army, each with their own strengths and weaknesses that you will need to carefully manage. And while it is a ton of fun to slowly see your tiny settlement grow to a not that tiny settlement, the AI controlling your villagers can be incredibly problematic, with them often getting stuck or performing completely unnecessary actions, though it does seem to be getting better with the, thankfully, frequent updates they have been putting out so far. The whole settlement management system isn't as deep as in some other games like RimWorld, but it works well enough. Even if you do nothing, your village doesn't just stand still, it feels alive. If you're the type who loves survival and construction games with the realistic aesthetic and very slow progression, Bellwright could be for you. It's of course especially appealing if you enjoy managing and building up settlements, but you need to understand that there is a chance the game will not be finished by the developers. And if you're someone who needs a game to be polished and complete before you buy, or if you're easily frustrated by repetitive tasks and fetch quests, Bellwright really isn't the right game for you, in all honesty, especially not in early access. Drop a like if this helped you out, and I'll see you next time.